tell you something about Andrew. This is my boy right here. You disrespect him, you're disrespecting me.
Inside fighting. Shout out to Inside Fighting.
We are back. It's the Fight SZN Podcast. It's your boy Jesse Rowe with Inside Fighting, joined as always by Timothy James, our head writer over here. What's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing good, Jesse. I'm glad to be back. I'm excited about the Fight SZN this weekend, and it's always good to be part of the Inside Fighting crew.
It's a pleasure to have you. And so I guess really quick, just off the top of the bat, before we get into the biggest news of the week, let's just sort of recap what happened with UFC. God, I'm like already blanking out. It's such a blur. UFC 290 went down, International Fight Week. Volkanovski wiped the floor with Yair Rodriguez, much to my dismay, as I predicted Yair would win. I was very, very wrong. The big shocking thing that happened that you and I were both just absolutely blown away by was Du Plessis putting them hands on Robert Whittaker, really just putting it on him. And wasn't really much of a fight, with the exception of a takedown by Whittaker and maybe a couple of jabs here and there in the first round. But other than that, Du Plessis just kind of owned that fight. And I'm interested in your take on how it happened and just what your immediate reaction is.
My immediate reaction is I'm not going to doubt this guy anymore, because I thought Robert Whittaker was going to beat that ass. That did not happen. Early in the round, Whittaker was doing some things that I thought he would. He was dancing around on the outside. He was landing those 1-2s with some kicks. But man, it all started with a jab. The thing that I realized about Du Plessis is that he looks really sloppy. He looks like, he's just blitzing out there. He's a wild man. But what I learned in that fight is there's a method to his madness.
There is.
And he uses his physicality to his advantage. He's very strong. The way that he got that front headlock, it was like a side headlock position, almost like a judo throw, which you don't see in men's MMA very often. That's a throw you see in women's MMA. It almost never works in men MMA. And Du Plessis just ragdolled Robert Whittaker. I was not expecting that. His grappling is a lot more advanced than I realized. And there's a method to his madness. So now I'm really psyched about that fight with Izzy. Yeah,
absolutely. We're going to get to that in a second. One thing I noticed, I saw another guy, Luke Thomas. He did a breakdown of how Du Plessis won. Really interesting. Go watch it. He was timing in between the beats is kind of how he was breaking down, where Du Plessis kind of makes it look really sloppy. He just kind of looks like a drunken fighter a little bit. He's really stiff when he's fighting. He looks really stiff. But so he's creating these little feints, and he's setting up Whittaker in between the beats, where normally when you set up the feints, you're setting them up so that you're trying to time the feint, and then when you think the feint is coming, then the 1-2 comes, right?
Right.
This is where he was sort of throwing his punch at a half step of when the feint was supposed to come, or at a half step of when the jab was supposed to come. And that's why his jab carried into the momentum of Whittaker going down for the takedown at the exact same time. So it created just a step off that created that momentum, just Whittaker's face into his jab, and it was over.
Yep. Whittaker was moving forward. Du Plessis was throwing his jab at the same time. That just magnified the force of the jab. And it's kind of funny because Du Plessis didn't even look like he put everything behind it, but because Whittaker was moving forward that way, it made the punch that much harder. And Du Plessis, he even ducked out to the right side right after he jabbed it. So he was trying to avoid the shot.
He left the screen. I was like, where are you? He left the screen on the telecast, and then, but I think it's because he jabbed and then he jumped back a little bit. It was sort of it wasn't like an intentional knockout. Anyways, that being said, he gets the big win, and then the camera pans over to Israel Adesanya, and it's Izzy just he's doing this. His face, dries up, and he's ready to go. Gets into the ring. He begs Dana for a chance to do a face-off, and Dricus points out, normally it's the contender who goes into the ring, like Sean O'Malley going into face-off with Aljo. This time it was Izzy, who's like defended his belt 8 times or whatever it is, goes into the ring, faces off with him. And look, a lot of people are giving Izzy shit for this. I thought it was kind of hilarious. Izzy said what he was going to do beforehand. I don't think it's because Izzy was drunk. He literally, when he was sober on his YouTube channel, he says that's exactly what he was going to do. So his whole thing was to make it about the Africa comments. We don't really have to get into that. I think people are overreacting to what Izzy did. Yeah. This is I think it hypes this fight up even more. I think Dricus kind of needs that because Dricus isn't like a huge draw in any way. This is like, I think they need that, right? Like they need that storyline to make this interesting for people. And yeah, so what's your take on that and just how the fight plays out?
Yeah, I agree with you on 2 fronts. I think people really are overreacting. People are kind of overreacting on both sides. I saw a bunch of people were saying, "Oh, Izzy is so embarrassing. He's this, he that. He shouldn't have said that," and all this stuff. A lot of pearl clutching, I believe, is the phrase. Like, "Oh my God, I can't believe he said that." And then there were people on the other side being like, "Oh, this was some brave political moment from Izzy." No, I think Izzy was a little tipsy. He wanted to hype up the fight. He wanted to get in Dricus's head. And you're right, because this is hyping up the fight. And I think you're absolutely right that Dricus needs it, because Dricus isn't exactly a guy who's, super slick on the mic. Izzy's the guy who's going to be selling this fight. And, building that up, I think it's going to be really intense. Listen, my head says Izzy's going to be able to piece him up on the feet. But like I just said, I don't want to doubt Du Plessis anymore. He has some grappling skills that I think would give problems to Izzy.
Yeah.
Because he showed me stuff in that fight that I think guys like Marvin Vettori and guys like Whittaker didn't do against Izzy.
Or weren't able to do. Because I do think that's the knock on Izzy, is that's why Blachowicz beat him pretty easily when they fought at 205, was because they weren't able to get to the ground and get on top of Izzy like that. Where I think that that's if any one of those guys could have done it, those fights would have turned out much differently.
Well,
I think you'd agree.
The difference is those guys were able, like Vettori got his back. Whittaker also got his back, but he was backpacked, so it was a little different. They were able to get him down, and they weren't able to stay on top because they didn't advance positions. They just sort of tried to hold on to his hips. Du Plessis, he breaks your posture when you're trying to stand up. That's what Adesanya does. He tries to stand up when he gets taken down. He breaks posture and he advances positions. He does that better. He did it really well in the Darren Till fight, and he did it in this fight against Whittaker. If he can do that against Izzy, man, that fight, it's so fascinating. Right now, I'm going with Izzy, but I don't want to doubt Du Plessis. I just want to see that fight.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. That's I actually think that'll be a good fight. I hope it's in 8 weeks in Australia. I don't know if the turnaround is going to be quick enough for Du Plessis. We'll see, but that would be cool. Other than fighting in South Africa, which would be cool. But speaking of Africa, one of the former UFC African kings of the UFC, former heavyweight champion of the UFC, Francis Ngannou, fumbled the bag big time, Timmy. He fumbled the bag all the way to a super mega fight boxing match against the biggest name in boxing right now, Tyson Fury. They're going to be fighting. It's a 10-round fight. It is not an exhibition, but it is not for the heavyweight belt. So it still counts on the professional record of Ngannou and of Fury. Just your immediate reaction, your thoughts about it, and how you feel, just in terms of how you feel for Francis, because I know he kind of took a lot of heat for leaving the UFC, and just what's your take on it?
Listen, I've always been a Francis Ngannou fan. I love his story. I don't know how familiar you are with his story. For anyone who's not, a good place to start is his appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience. And I'm really happy for Francis. Obviously, he's not going to win this fight. I really wanted there to be some sort of stipulation, like just give him MMA gloves. Just give him something to give him more of a chance. Obviously, that didn't happen. I think Tyson Fury is going to piece him up. Hopefully, Tyson Fury doesn't do too much damage because I still want to see Francis have success in the PFL. But I mean, he did so well for himself. Everyone thought he messed up. I even thought he messed up. He got a huge contract offer from the UFC, and I didn't want him to leave because I'm a selfish fan. I wanted to see him fight John Jones.
Yeah.
I still want to see him fight. I personally, if I had a choice between John Jones versus Ngannou and Fury versus Ngannou in boxing, obviously I'm going Ngannou Jones. But good for Francis Ngannou, man. I'm happy for the dude. And Tyson Fury is probably going to knock him the fuck out.
Yeah, and it's one of those things. I think you're right about the fight. Like Fury's going to win. Ngannou, I think he's the classic case, the classic knockout power. Like Ngannou has a lot in common with a guy like Deontay Wilder, who almost knocked out Fury a couple of times. Really came really close to beating him, like knocking him out cold a couple of times. He just doesn't have. We don't really know the boxing skills he has against a guy like this. I mean, I was hoping he would get a couple of maybe like one warm up fight against like a lower level heavyweight, just something to like get his bearings before he fights a guy like Fury. But it is kind of like this fight was on the table from the very beginning, and it's very clear. It's very clear that this was always an option for him, and Francis knew it. I don't think you leave that situation as the heavyweight champion of the UFC unless he knew it. Although he did know John Jones was coming back, which means that he did know there was a chance that his reign was coming to an end, potentially coming to an end. That was like the one guy. He had, other than like Pavlovich, we'd kind of seen him beat everybody, right? So that being said, yeah, Fury's going to fuck him up, but that doesn't even matter. He is going to make like $20 million from this fight at least. And he's going to make money. Yeah, he's going to make, like I'm saying, like at least, like he's going to make like 3 times what he would make for any heavyweight fight in the UFC. He's going to make probably more than that. I don't even know what the numbers are. I'm just assuming it's like way more than that. Like the marketing on the run up, the endorsement deals he's going to get, the hype that's going to be behind it. Francis Ngannou hit a grand slam home run. He deserves credit for it. And like the UFC is fine. The UFC is going to be is great without Francis Ngannou, great with him, whatever. We'll never see the John Jones fight, which is unfortunate, but good for him. And I think it's cool that Fury's putting his record up against this guy. Is it like a huge risk? No, but it still is risky. I mean, the guy can knock you out if he lands a punch. So I'm excited.
It would have been interesting. I wish they did MMA gloves, or like give Francis one little thing. Give him elbows. I don't know. Give him half kicks. Just like one extra thing, just to give him a bit more of a chance. But yeah, we're gonna see how it plays out.
Yeah, I'm just interested to see where it goes. Because you're right. It's a big risk in terms of like, if he just gets beat up, does it hurt Francis's ability to like sell a fight in PFL? Because that's a PFL is putting all their eggs in this basket. So it's kind of a big risk on their part, because I saw that they were promoting him and all of this. So like, I don't know if they have some sort of role to play in this, where they're going to like, Dana was there for Connor when he running up to the fight. Is the guy from, forgetting the guy's name, the guy that runs PFL, is he going to be there with Francis leading up to the Fury fight?
I don't think so. I think Ngannou was given the stipulation that he could pursue boxing without any involvement from them. That was part of his contract. But Francis has nothing to lose and everything to gain. This is technically more risky for Fury, even though I don't think there's any chance he loses, because if Francis Ngannou gets his ass kicked by Tyson Fury, it's like we all saw that coming, right?
Right.
It's a win-win. He's there to get his bag. He got his bag, and if he wins, oh my God, if he wins, the PFL is going to go crazy, because they're going to be so lucky.
Right. If he beats Tyson Fury, he becomes the baddest man on the planet. He becomes like the biggest star in combat sports. I mean, that would be a massive, massive moment if that were to happen. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not going to suggest anyone to put money down on that, though.
Yeah, it's already like before we go, it's a -1,000 for Fury to win on most betting sites, and a plus 500. So you're not even getting great return.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like a weird odds, like where you're not even getting great return on him. It's also still very early. I'm sure these odds are going to shift, but it's like a minus 1,000 plus 600, something like that. It's weird. The odds are weird.
Yeah,
So,
I remember that. I expect closer to the fight, it's going to be like minus 3,000 versus because everyone's going to be betting on Fury.
exactly. Well, anyways, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for chatting with me, brother. And if you don't follow Timmy, follow him. Timmy Shoots MMA on Twitter. He's a good follow. Follow us on Inside Fighting. And follow Timmy's articles on InsideFighting.com. And don't I don't know what I was about to say. Either way, thanks for joining me, Timmy.
Thanks, man. I'm glad.
I didn't stick the landing there, but whatever.
That's all right. We stumbled.
Yeah.
We fumbled the bag just like Francis.
I fumbled the landing.
Let me tell you something about Andrew. This is my boy right here. You disrespect him, you're disrespecting me.
Inside fighting, shout out to Inside Fighting.